In a small town where kindness often went unnoticed, a young waitress lived each day balancing trays, wiping counters, and forcing a smile for strangers. She wasn't rich. She wasn't famous. But she carried a heart that refused to let anyone leave her diner feeling hungry or unseen. One cold evening, as rain tapped softly against the windows, an elderly black woman walked in, frail, her clothes worn, her hands trembling as she searched through her purse. She didn't have enough to cover her bill. To everyone else in the diner, she looked like just another forgotten soul, struggling against the weight of life's hardships. But the waitress saw something different. Without hesitation, she stepped in, covering the woman's meal with her own tips from the day. She thought it was just a small act of kindness, something she would never mention again. What she didn't know was that this one decision would change her life forever. Because that old woman wasn't who she seemed. Behind the wrinkled face and tired eyes was a secret so shocking, so unimaginable, that when it came out, the whole town would never look at the waitress, or the mysterious woman, the same way again. This is the story of how a simple act of kindness revealed a billionaire grandma hidden in plain sight. The town of Maplewood wasn't much to look at. One main road cut through its center, lined with mom-and-pop shops that had seen better days. There was a single post office, a hardware store, and the kind of diner where the same people sat in the same booths every morning. That diner was where Clara Jameson spent most of her days. At 24 years old, she had already learned that dreams didn't always pay the bills. She had once imagined herself leaving Maplewood for college, maybe even starting a little bakery of her own in a big city. But life had other plans. Her mother had fallen ill 2 years earlier, and medical bills stacked up faster than Clara could keep track. Her father had been gone since she was a child, leaving Clara to carry the weight of responsibility alone. She worked double shifts, pouring coffee for truckers, wiping down counters sticky from spilled syrup, and smiling at customers even when exhaustion pulled at her face. "Morning, Clara." Mr. Daniels, a retired mechanic, called out from his usual booth near the window. "Morning, Mr. D," Clara replied, balancing 2 plates of eggs and bacon in one hand and a coffee pot in the other. "Extra crispy bacon, just the way you like it." She placed the food in front of him, topping off his coffee without being asked. It was second nature to her. She knew which customer liked their pancakes stacked high and which one preferred their toast barely browned. She knew who tipped well and who never did. And yet, she treated them all the same. Because for Clara, the diner wasn't just a place to earn tips. It was a place where she tried, in her own quiet way, to make people feel seen. Still, no one really noticed her. To the town, she was just the waitress. No one asked about her dreams. Few asked how she was doing. She was the girl who kept the coffee hot, the girl with the tired smile, the girl who somehow never seemed to stop moving. On her breaks, Clara would sometimes stare out the diner window at the road stretching beyond Maplewood. She'd watch cars pass by, wondering what it would be like to leave, to start fresh somewhere new. But then the bell above the door would jingle, pulling her back to reality. And so, day after day, Clara carried on. Invisible but kind. Unnoticed but unwavering. She had no idea that soon, one rainy evening, her ordinary life would collide with an extraordinary secret. A secret that had been hiding in plain sight, waiting for her small act of kindness to bring it to light. Clara had a rhythm to her days. Wake up before sunrise. Pull her chestnut hair into a neat ponytail. Slip into her faded uniform and lace up shoes that had lost their shine years ago. By 6 o'clock sharp, she was unlocking the diner doors and flipping on the neon sign that buzzed faintly in the morning air. The regulars filed in like clockwork. Some offered a polite nod, others grumbled about the weather or the economy. But most came for routine, a hot cup of coffee, the comfort of the same corner booth, the same chatter. Clara gave them more than routine. She gave them warmth. When Mrs. Carter, the widow who lived 2 blocks down, came in looking particularly worn, Clara slipped her an extra muffin without adding it to the bill. "On the house," she whispered, sliding the plate across the counter. Mrs. Carter's eyes filled with gratitude, though her pride kept her from saying much more than, "Thank you, dear." When a group of high school kids rushed in with loud laughter and only a handful of crumpled dollar bills, Clara made their milkshakes a little taller anyway, letting them feel like kings for a moment. And when a truck driver left behind a worn wallet one afternoon, Clara ran 3 blocks through the heat to catch him before he pulled away. "You left this," she shouted, breathless. The man looked at her with shock, then shame, realizing how easily someone else could have pocketed it. Clara just smiled and shrugged. No worries. Safe travels. None of these moments were grand. None were broadcast to the world. In fact, most people forgot about them the very next day. But Clara didn't need applause. Her kindness was woven into her nature. Small, quiet acts that stitched dignity into the lives of those who crossed her path. Still, there were nights when she lay in bed staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering if it mattered. The bills on her dresser reminded her that kindness didn't pay electricity. The gnawing in her stomach reminded her she'd skipped dinner to make sure her mom had enough to eat. Sometimes she asked herself if she was foolish, giving so much when she had so little. But every morning, when the bell above the diner door jingled and the first customer walked in, Clara reminded herself of one thing. No one should ever leave here feeling invisible. She lived by it, even if it meant sacrificing her own comfort. What she didn't know was that the world was watching in its own way. That her small, unnoticed kindness was about to ripple far beyond the cracked linoleum floors of Maplewood Diner. And soon, one unexpected visitor would put her quiet heroism to the ultimate test. It was a Tuesday evening in late October when the rain began to fall. Not the kind of rain that refreshed the air or painted the streets silver. This was a steady, cold drizzle that crept under coats and made the small town of Maplewood feel even smaller, lonelier. The diner was quieter than usual. A few regulars sat hunched in their booths, nursing their coffees. The neon sign outside flickered against the wet pavement, casting a faint pink glow through the window. Clara wiped down the counter, humming softly to herself, her apron damp from brushing against dishes. That was when the door creaked open, and the bell above it gave a tired jingle. An elderly black woman stepped inside. Her figure was frail, her shoulders hunched beneath a threadbare coat that looked 2 decades old. Raindrops clung to her wiry gray hair, and her hands trembled as she clutched a worn leather purse. She looked around nervously, as though entering the diner had taken all the courage she had left. Clara immediately noticed. She always noticed. "Evenin', ma'am," Clara said gently, her smile warm. "Take a seat wherever you like. I'll be right with you." The woman hesitated, glancing at the empty booths. Finally, she slid into one near the back, as though trying not to draw attention. Clara brought over a menu, but the woman waved it away. "Just a bowl of soup," she murmured, her voice soft, carrying years of exhaustion. Clara nodded and hurried to the kitchen, returning moments later with steaming chicken noodle soup and a small basket of bread. She set it down carefully, noticing how the woman's hands shook as she reached for the spoon. The woman ate slowly, savoring every bite. Clara, busy with other customers, still found herself glancing back at her. Something about her struck a chord deep inside Clara, a loneliness she recognized, a quiet dignity beneath worn clothes. When the meal was done, the woman opened her purse and began digging through it. Her fingers fumbled with coins, a few crumpled bills, a faded bus ticket. Clara saw her lips press into a thin line, her eyes dropping with embarrassment. The total came to $6.75. She had $3.20. The diner grew uncomfortably quiet as the woman's struggle became obvious. A couple of regulars glanced over, then quickly looked away, uninterested in the scene. One man muttered something under his breath about people coming in without enough money. Clara didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, picking up the check. "Don't worry about it," she said softly. "Dinner's on me tonight." The woman's eyes lifted, startled. "But, child, Clara shook her head with a reassuring smile. "No explanations needed. Just eat, rest, and stay warm for a while. That's enough." The woman stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded, her eyes glistening. "You're a kind soul," she whispered. Clara brushed it off. She'd done this before, covering a bill here and there with a few dollars she made in tips. It was no big deal, at least not to her. But as the old woman rose to leave, she placed a thin, fragile hand on Clara's arm. "You think this is small," she said in a low voice only Clara could hear. "But one day you'll see it isn't." And then she was gone, swallowed by the rain and darkness outside. Clara stood frozen for a moment, staring at the door. She didn't understand why those words echoed inside her. She thought it was just another act of kindness in her endless string of forgotten good deeds. What she didn't know was that the frail stranger carried a secret far beyond the imagination of anyone in Maplewood, and that her simple decision to help would be the beginning of a story that would change her life, and her town, forever. The rain had stopped by morning, but the memory of the frail woman lingered in Clara's mind like a song she couldn't shake. She went about her shift as usual, brewing coffee, sliding plates across the counter, greeting customers with that tired but genuine smile. Yet every so often her eyes would drift to the booth in the back. Empty now. She wondered where the woman had gone after leaving the diner. Did she have a place to sleep? Did she make it home safely? Or was she still wandering Maplewood's damp streets, carrying the weight of hunger and years of struggle? Clara shook the thought away. She'd done what she could. That was enough. At least, that's what she told herself. The regulars didn't seem to notice anything different. Mr. Daniels cracked his usual jokes. The high school kids burst in after practice, loud and carefree. Even Mrs. Carter complained about her aching knees the same way she always did. Life in Maplewood went on unchanged. To everyone else, it was just another night at the diner. But not for the woman. 2 days later, Clara saw her again, just for a flash. She was standing across the street, half hidden beneath the awning of the hardware store. Watching. Her threadbare coat buttoned to her chin, eyes sharp despite her frail frame. When Clara glanced up, their eyes met. The woman gave the faintest of nods, then turned and disappeared into the crowd before Clara could react. A strange shiver ran through her. It wasn't fear exactly, more curiosity. Why had the woman come back? Why had she been watching from a distance? That evening, when Clara told her mother about it as she helped her with her medication, her mother chuckled softly. "Some people cross our paths for reasons we don't always see, Clara. You have a way of touching lives without knowing it." Clara smiled faintly, but inside she dismissed the thought. She wasn't a saint. She was just a waitress, scraping by, trying to keep the lights on. Covering a bowl of soup hardly counted as life-changing. or so she believed. What Clara didn't know was that word of her kindness had already begun to spread, quietly, subtly, like whispers carried by the wind. The frail old woman had spoken to someone, and that someone had spoken to another. And though Clara herself remained invisible to most of the town, her simple act of covering a bill was the first ripple in a pond that would soon stir into waves. Waves that would return to her in a way she could never have imagined. A week passed. Maplewood moved at its usual pace, slow, predictable, almost stubborn in its sameness. But Clara's routine was broken one evening when the bell above the diner door jingled, and the frail woman returned. The moment Clara saw her, she nearly dropped the coffee pot in her hand. Same worn coat, same trembling hands. But this time, her eyes seemed different, sharper, more observant, as though she was studying Clara just as much as Clara was studying her. "Evenin', ma'am," Clara said, regaining her composure with a smile. "Back again. I'll get you your usual." "No," the woman said firmly, her voice stronger than Clara remembered. "Not soup tonight. Coffee. Black." Clara nodded and poured the steaming cup, setting it gently on the table. She waited for the woman to pull out her purse again, half expecting the same fumbling with coins and wrinkled bills. But the woman didn't reach for it. She just sat there, hands folded neatly, watching Clara. "You're not going to ask me to pay first," the woman finally said. Clara blinked. "No, ma'am. I trust you." The woman's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Not many people do." They sat in silence for a moment. Clara went back to work, but the woman's presence tugged at her thoughts. There was something deliberate about the way she had come back, about the way she spoke, almost like she was testing Clara. When Clara returned with a slice of pie, on the house, the woman tilted her head. "Why?" she asked. "Why what?" Clara replied. "Why do you give when you have so little?" The question caught Clara off guard. She wasn't used to being seen, not like that. She shrugged, fumbling for words. "Because sometimes people need it more than I do. And I'd hate to think someone walked away from here still hungry." The woman studied her for a long time, eyes unreadable. Finally, she nodded and took a slow sip of coffee. When she stood to leave, she placed a $1 on the table, far less than the bill. But she leaned in close to Clara and whispered, "The world doesn't forget hearts like yours." And then, just like before, she slipped into the night. Clara stood frozen, pie plate in hand, feeling both confused and unsettled. She didn't know why the woman's words stuck with her. She didn't know why she felt like every interaction was a riddle wrapped in kindness. What she didn't see was the sleek black car parked half a block away, its tinted windows concealing a driver waiting patiently. The frail woman climbed inside, her tired posture relaxing the moment the door closed. "Did she pass?" the driver asked. The woman's lips curled into a knowing smile. "She doesn't even realize she's being tested." The car pulled away into the night, leaving Maplewood behind, but not Clara. Never Clara. The days grew colder as November settled over Maplewood. The diner put up paper turkeys in the windows, and customers spoke about Thanksgiving plans. But Clara couldn't shake the image of the old woman slipping into that black car. Something about it didn't fit. A woman that frail, that poor-looking, didn't belong in a car so sleek and polished. Still, Clara pushed the thought aside. She had bills to pay, a mother to care for, and shifts that left her too exhausted to puzzle over strangers. Life had always taught her not to expect miracles. Until one Thursday evening, when the impossible walked through the diner doors again. The frail woman. But this time, she wasn't alone. Two men in tailored suits entered with her, one stepping slightly ahead, the other behind, like bodyguards. They helped her out of her coat, revealing not rags, but a finely pressed blouse beneath. Subtle, elegant jewelry glinted at her wrist. Clara froze, the coffee pot trembling in her hand. Whispers spread quickly among the customers. Never before had anyone like that walked into Maplewood Diner. The woman settled into her usual booth, but the presence around her was entirely different. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was commanding. When Clara approached nervously with her notepad, the woman gave her a small smile. "Relax, child. Just coffee and soup tonight. Old habits are hard to break." Clara scribbled it down, but her curiosity burned. Who was this woman really? Finally, Clara couldn't hold it in any longer. As she set down the steaming bowl of soup, she asked quietly, "Who are you?" The woman's eyes twinkled, as though she'd been waiting for that very question. She leaned forward, her voice low but steady. "My name is Evelyn Hartwell." The name meant nothing to Clara at first, but the reaction around the diner was instant. Forks clattered. Conversations stopped. Mr. Daniels, who rarely missed a day at the diner, whispered hoarsely, "Hartwell?" As in the Hartwell Foundation. Clara's heart skipped. The Hartwell Foundation was whispered about even in their small town, a vast charity organization funding schools, hospitals, and relief programs across the country. Rumor had it the woman behind it was one of the wealthiest widows in America. Clara's eyes widened. "But I thought—" She stopped herself, embarrassed. "You thought I was just another poor old woman," Evelyn finished for her, her tone neither cruel nor offended. That was the point. The diner was so silent, Clara could hear the rain ticking against the windows. Evelyn sipped her coffee calmly, her eyes never leaving Clara. "I've spent years hiding in plain sight," Evelyn continued. "Not because I needed to, but because money has a way of blinding people. I wanted to see who would treat me with kindness when they thought I had nothing to give in return." Clara felt her knees weaken. Her chest tightened with disbelief. "You," Evelyn said softly, her gaze piercing. "You saw me. You helped me. Not once, but twice. And you never asked for anything in return. That's rarer than gold." Clara didn't know what to say. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The billionaire grandma leaned back, her frail hands folded neatly on the table. "And now, my dear, it's time the world saw you." By morning, Maplewood was buzzing like a hive struck with a stick. Word had spread faster than wildfire. The frail woman who had been seen slipping into the diner late at night wasn't just another struggling soul. She was Evelyn Hartwell, the reclusive billionaire whose name had graced foundations, hospitals, and scholarships across the country. And the waitress who had covered her meal? The girl no one really noticed. That was Clara Jameson. At first, Clara didn't believe how quickly it all traveled. But when she arrived at the diner for her morning shift, she was met not with a quiet shuffle of regulars, but with reporters, flashing cameras, and curious townsfolk pressing against the windows. "Miss Jameson, how did you meet Evelyn Hartwell? Did you know who she was before? Is it true she's offering you something?" Clara blinked, stunned, clutching her apron as though it could shield her. Inside, customers whispered, eyes following her every move. People who had once overlooked her suddenly wanted to know her name, her story, her heart. Mrs. Carter, the widow who had once sat quietly in the corner, now grasped Clara's hand. "Child, I always knew there was something special about you." But Clara remembered the truth, that only days ago, most of these people had barely noticed when she skipped her own dinner or slipped free muffins to those who couldn't afford them. Now, they looked at her as if she were some kind of saint. Evelyn Hartwell didn't make things easier. The billionaire returned that afternoon, not with bodyguards this time, but with the grace of someone who no longer needed to hide. She walked into the diner with a quiet smile, and the place fell silent. Cameras flashed from outside the window. She gestured for Clara to sit with her. Clara hesitated but obeyed, sliding into the booth across from her. "You see what kindness can do," Evelyn said softly, nodding toward the crowd. "It has a way of revealing itself, even when you think no one's watching." Clara shifted uncomfortably. "But I didn't do it for this. I didn't expect anything." "That," Evelyn said with a knowing smile, "is exactly why you were the one who deserved to be seen." The conversation was interrupted by the mayor of Maplewood himself, rushing in, his tie crooked, his hair damp from the rain. He shook Evelyn's hand like a man who'd just discovered treasure buried in his own backyard. "Miss Hartwell, welcome to Maplewood. We had no idea." "I know you didn't," Evelyn replied calmly, her eyes flicking back to Clara. In the days that followed, Clara's life turned upside down. News outlets ran stories with headlines like, "Waitress's small kindness catches billionaire's eye." From invisible to inspirational, Maplewood Waitress becomes local hero. Some people treated Clara with awe, others with envy. A few muttered that she had just been lucky, in the right place at the right time. But no one ignored her anymore. Clara, however, felt torn. She hadn't wanted the spotlight. She hadn't done anything remarkable, not in her eyes. She had only followed the quiet rules she lived by: never let anyone leave the diner feeling unseen. Yet now, the whole town, maybe even the whole country, was looking right at her. And Evelyn Hartwell wasn't finished. One crisp evening, as the diner emptied and the neon sign buzzed in the dark, Evelyn slipped Clara a folded envelope. Inside was not money, but something that made Clara's heart race: an invitation. "Come see the world I live in," Evelyn whispered. "I have something for you. Something that will change everything." Clara's hands trembled as she held the envelope. She didn't know it yet, but her quiet life in Maplewood was about to explode into something she could never have dreamed of. The invitation in the envelope weighed on Clara like a secret she wasn't ready to carry. For 2 nights, she barely slept, the words etched into her mind. "Come see the world I live in. I have something for you. Something that will change everything." Finally, on Saturday morning, Evelyn's car pulled up in front of the diner. It was the same sleek black vehicle Clara had seen weeks earlier. The driver opened the door, and Evelyn, dressed elegantly in a deep blue coat, beckoned her inside. "Don't be afraid, child," Evelyn said with a smile. "This isn't the end of your story. It's just the beginning." They drove out of Maplewood, past farms and hills, until they reached a sprawling estate hidden behind iron gates. The mansion was unlike anything Clara had ever seen. Tall, sweeping windows, endless gardens, fountains that sparkled even in the weak November light. Clara's breath caught. "This is your home." "One of them," Evelyn replied with a shrug, as though it were no more than a cabin in the woods. Inside, the house was filled not with gold and jewels, but with photographs. Walls lined with images of children in schools, families in new homes, patients in hospitals smiling through recovery. Everywhere Clara looked, she saw the quiet evidence of Evelyn's philanthropy. "This is where the money goes," Evelyn said, her voice soft but proud. "Not into vanity, but into people. Into lives." She led Clara into a sunlit library, where a leather folder sat waiting on the table. Evelyn pushed it toward her. Clara hesitated, her fingers trembling as she opened it. Inside was a document that made her eyes widen. It was a deed. To the diner. Her diner. "I bought it yesterday," Evelyn said matter-of-factly. "It's yours now." Clara's throat tightened. "But why me?" "Because you've already been running it in spirit," Evelyn replied. "Every act of kindness you've shown, every soul you fed, every small sacrifice you made, that's what a true owner of a place like that should be. Not a businessman chasing profit. A caretaker chasing people's hearts." Tears welled in Clara's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," Evelyn whispered, reaching across to clasp her hand. "Just keep doing what you've always done. Keep seeing people. Keep making sure no one walks away hungry or invisible. That, child, is the true wealth." When Clara returned to Maplewood, the diner felt different. The neon sign still buzzed, the counter was still sticky from syrup, and the regulars still grumbled about their toast. But now, It wasn't just where she worked. It was hers. Word spread again, and the town buzzed with admiration and gossip. Some called her lucky, others called her blessed. But Clara didn't care. She slipped Mrs. Carter another free muffin. She made the kids' milkshakes a little taller. She greeted every customer with the same warm smile. And every night, as she locked up, she whispered the same words Evelyn had left her with. The world doesn't forget hearts like yours. This was the story of a waitress whose small act of kindness revealed a billionaire grandma hidden in plain sight. Clara didn't become rich overnight. She didn't ask for fame or recognition. What she received was something greater, the chance to keep doing what she loved, with dignity, and to learn that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in compassion. And maybe, just maybe, this story reminds us that we never know who's sitting across from us. A stranger, a forgotten soul, or perhaps someone carrying a secret that could change our lives forever. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. Your engagement helps us keep sharing powerful stories that inspire, shock, and touch hearts.